2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. This is Michael Brown. We're here for the hearing on 728 Randolph Avenue, 40B application for a comprehensive permit. Our last hearing was on March 2nd, which was about 3 weeks ago. We had a site visit this past Saturday. To those who made it, thank you for attending. I also believe we've received some documents addressed to the board over the last week. One was a March 18th letter from Sean Reardon that's going to be the subject of our hearing tonight. And the second was March 22nd letter from Marion McKettrick that appears to have arisen out of the site visit. So those are on the
first impressions were you started out by looking at the existing conditions plan, and it was just a great plan. So, started off really well, and looking forward to the rest of the information. And it's always a good start when you have good existing conditions information, because then it makes things a lot easier to understand, a lot easier to articulate, and a lot easier to sort of put into perspective. Clearly, there's a capable team. We're familiar with the work that all these folks do, so we know that this is not people that are going to have trouble kind of coming up with solutions. So, but it was a little bit strange. I wouldn't have expected some of the fundamental issues to poke up that we found in the submittal. And we have a letter that sort of enumerates all of those comments, but they're really two fundamental issues. One is, as it relates to site access, and the other is the drainage design. And on both of those, I think there's quite a bit more work that needs to be done before we get to a point where we have sort of a workable solution. And I'll just take them one at a time real quick. So first, as it relates to access, number one, and I think we sort of touched on this last time we met, the front entrance doesn't seem to be well thought. Number one is it's not clear how it's intended to operate. There's 3 lanes available. One's an existing lane, but I'm not sure if it's intended to be used or if the site's a right turn only. So really need to clarify that intersection. And what's also problematic is it doesn't seem to recognize that there's a staircase that sticks out from the side of the house. right into one of the lanes. So I think that maybe people think it's a little bit more simple than it is, but there really needs to be quite a bit more thought about how traffic is going to get to and from that location. And what I'd ask people to consider is this is really the equivalent of a 40 unit subdivision, right? So it's 40 new homes. So it's not a minor, it's not just a driveway. It needs to function like a road. So we need to make sure that everything moves smoothly through there and everybody that's adjacent to it's accommodated. And that house at 736 is really close. And like I said, it's got a door that opens right out into that travel lane. It's got a 4x4 stairway with a couple steps that extend out. So, I mean, even the front corner of the house is only about 2 feet away from where I would calculate the edge of the entrance lane to be. So we just gotta, that needs to be thought through quite a bit more. Then another part that was sort of troubling was handicap access. So there's a section of road that's graded at 15%, and 5% is the maximum for running slope for handicap access. So it's difficult to figure out where the solution to that problem is. And I don't think it's acceptable to not have a handicap access from a 40 unit building to the public way. So, you know, that's something that needs to get thought through. And then sort of the last part about my access concerns, and we run into this quite often, is really not a lot of thought into how a fire truck is going to access the site and get in and out. Couple things similar, maximum slope the chief is looking for is 10%, driveways at 15%. Minimum width on a roadway for fire access is 20 feet, driveways 18 feet. There's really no place for a fire truck to turn around. So these are all things that need to get fleshed through substantially before we should go much further. And then sort of similar concern was related to drainage. And we all know that drainage is always a hot button issue for these kind of reviews. In this case, they have a large field underneath the parking lot, which makes perfect sense, except that I don't understand how they could have missed that detention system or the infiltration system is 2 feet underwater. The report says it's 2 feet of separation from the groundwater, when in fact, it's actually the groundwater is shown in one of the test pits as being about 2.25 feet above the bottom of the system. So, and there's also other areas of the system that in all likelihood, the groundwater is probably even higher if they tested because the grade goes up quite a bit. So that's a fundamental issue that given the underlying soils there, it's going to be a real hard thing to solve. So I would expect that there's going to be some substantial changes as a function of that. One other thing is the analysis. Usually we have a problem with off-site flow not getting considered. So in this case, the property up to the north, a good portion of that property flows across the site. Not a big deal. That happens all the time. However, it needs to be taken into consideration when they do their drainage design. So right now in their modeling, they've calculated that flow and taken it out of the model. But there's really no measures shown on the plan that show how that flow is going to get diverted around the site. And there's not that much room there to do it. One of our big concerns on that is, that diversion has to happen on the subject parcel. We can't expect the abutting parcel to carry shunted water across it that gets sort of pushed off the site by the project. So we're going to need to get that addressed. And then the other thing was, it was really cool. We had a geotech report, but there was a lot of information in the geotech report that seemed to conflict with the information on the drainage report. So what I was hoping could happen is that we take all of the test pits that they have available to them, put them on a plan and sort of reconcile them together so that we're talking about the same things. Then, I mean, just last couple of things that we're all used to seeing is, let's consider where snow is going to go. At least in this site, we have a little bit more room. But again, as these things get addressed, I can see that getting stressed even more. In this particular case, the challenge is that driveway coming towards Randolph Street, where on one side, we've got a pretty steep cut slope because of the widening that needs to take place there. And then on the other side, the driveway is right on the property line. So there's really no place to put snow along that whole driveway. And then the last thing, I was kind of frankly, a bit disappointed in is there's a construction management plan in the plan set, but it's not terribly well developed. For example, they show a soil stockpile area that's capable of storing about 150 yards of material. So, I think we got to be a little bit more thoughtful when it comes to sort of laying that out. I'd almost rather them not even put it in there than put something in there that's sort of not really well thought. But that being said, I mean, clearly you got a good team, clearly a bunch of smart people that I feel we can work through all these situations.
Thanks, Sean. I'll turn first to my fellow board members, Mr. Gray and Mr. Mullen. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any. I'm very interested in how the entrance is supposed to work. So I don't know whether or not that's something that is going to be revised based on these comments, or whether or not we should talk about it now. If it is being revised, I don't want to waste people's time, but I don't understand it. So I don't sure what people are expecting with respect to how the right of way and the new entrance are working side by side.
I have the same question. Mr. Freeman, are you able to comment?
Just a brief comment, and then I'll ask Rob or Deb if they would like to say anything. I think it would have been easy to understand if you all had been at the site visit. I'm not saying that that's definitive. And we're certainly considering all these comments, as I said at the outset. And I don't gainsay that seeing it on the two-dimensional plan, you would ask that question. So I'm not in any way criticizing the question. But the way it is out there is that the way it is on the site is that there's 12 feet, as Sean said, that is on 736 property, that my client's property has the right of way to use. The intent as drawn now is that we're not going to change that. We would expand on the other side where the right of way is all on my client's property, but subject to the right of Mr. Driscoll's property at 718 to use it. So the fact is it wouldn't interfere with the current owner or the future owners of 736 to continue to use their 12 feet, or also the portion that's going to be repaved and remade that would obviously fit. It's not going to leave, lips and, things like that, because they have a right in the full right of way themselves. They could overlap onto what we're going to improve. I think the expectation, which is probably responsive also to the question, is what's to stop the people from the condominium development to go onto the 12-foot portion that we're saying at this point we weren't intending to improve. And it's probably true that, although it would be logical to drive on the wider improved portion, yeah, they would have a right to, and they might. But again, it wouldn't interfere with the use by the folks at 736. So Rob or Deb, I don't know if you want to say anything further, or Jeff for that matter from McMahon Associates.
Could I just add just a quick question for clarification? So the intent is to have the driveway to the facility have a right turn only exit. So there's no left turns allowed from the project.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're clarifying. Getting the comments 2 days ago. We didn't have enough time to. We're working on a more clear entrance area for you, but we're going to be having a right turn only for the HOA for the condominium owners, and then we're going to clarify. We're going to basically we have a plan that's coming, and unfortunately, Deb can't get on to the Zoom call, but we're going to have a right turn only for the HOA for the condominium owners at 728, and then we're going to utilize the 12 feet of the right of way on the 736 property, and that's going to be the entrance into the site. We're going to have a 24. So let me just, if you don't mind, I could just describe what our revisions are. We're working on it as we speak, so we didn't have a lot of time, but this is roughly what we're doing. And Jeff, you could chime in on the safety stuff. But it'll be a 24-foot wide entrance driveway. And then we're going to have, again, a right turn, an exit, right turn only with signage, etc. a dotted yellow line down the middle, stop sign, pedestrian markings, etc. And then on the 736 side of the right of way, we're going to have the entrance into the site. And that 24 feet is going to extend to 718, and then we'll enlarge our 18-foot driveway per your recommendations to 20 feet to the building.
So,
But if
so
that's-
that, what I described is what is submitted so far. And Rob and Deb are a bit ahead of me in terms of their revised comments in the site visit.
Can you guys confirm if the traffic models a right turn only, or if it's allowing a left turn out of the facility?
Yeah, I'll just chime in there. Again, Jeff Bandini from McMahon Associates, project manager. So McMahon did the traffic study for this, and we looked at several aspects related to both the access and operations at the site driveway. Just to clarify, when we say right turn only, I know there were some questions about the width being excess as to what is required, and the right turn only doesn't serve to be an additional lane. That only serves to mean that the access is permitted as right turn only. In other words, there'll be only one lane of egress from the proposed facility, but the operations would be restricted to right turn only for the HOA, and the 718 and 736 would be permitted to turn left as needed. So I just wanted to clarify that because I know there were some questions about that.
But how was it modeled in your impact study? Was it modeled as a left and a right? I believe I recall there being a distribution to both directions.
Correct. There was a distribution in both directions. However, the intention of the site is to have it only so that the folks from 718 and 736 are allowed to turn left. The way we modeled it before that restriction was in place showed that the operations at the driveway could be achieved with level of service that is acceptable even if left turns and right turns were permitted.
So what was the logic behind having a right turn only as opposed to a right, just an unrestricted movement at the exit?
From my understanding, there was a concern, safety concern with the amount of vehicles that would be turning left out of the site. That was my understanding. However, our traffic study showed that operationally there was no substantial difference in operations, whether it was left turn and right turn or just right turn only.
So I guess what I'd ask is that there be one consistent approach. So if your model shows a left turn happening there, it's inconsistent. As part of the confusion, I didn't see any striping for the entry lane or anything like that. So
Understood.
Make sure everything's consistent.
Yeah, we're working on that right now, just to clarify. Okay.
Yeah, and if we need to, we'll want to make sure that the traffic study that we submit as part of the application package, again, matches what we submit as part of the updated plan as well.
So my question is, if the condominium owners are going to be limited to entering and exiting on the property that the applicant owns in fee and not be using the right of way, is it not true that the area on which they will be entering is also the same lane that Mr. Driscoll will be exiting?
I don't know if that might have been, believe what Rob, I know it's difficult to comprehend because
It's not that difficult, actually.
Again, we're working on plans to clarify your questions, but so we're utilizing.
What Rob said is a change from what's on the plans. What I described, which is consistent with what you just said, Mr. Mullen, is on the plans. When they change it so that the entire right-of-way is going to be used, then that obviates your question.
I was at the site visit and I still have no idea how this is going to work. We can maybe table that issue for a minute, but my question is,
and Michael, real quickly, if we can't understand in this forum how the intersection is supposed to work, it's impossible to believe that drivers will be able to do it safely. So what I would suggest is it can't be ambiguous. It's got to be explicitly clear. It's got to function like an intersection because that's the kind of volume it's going to see.
Sure, and you're going to have, in our submission prior to next meeting, you'll see it'll be crystal clear to everyone at the board right turn into the site, stop line. It'll be crystal clear that what we're doing here with the design. So you'll be able to see and understand. We're working on that.
Will you also be able to demonstrate how the owners of 718 and 736 are going to be permitted to make left turns while the residents of the HOA are only going to be allowed to make right turns?
There'll be signage to depict what they'll say right turn only for HOA. And there's the signage indicated on the plans as well. So you'll be able to see that as well.
And I know it's jumping ahead, but that could also be in the condominium documents. That would
I don't have confidence in that working, but can I ask if the property owners have been talked to, particularly the owner to the south, about the use of the portion of the right of way they own in fee?
with Mr. Driscoll represented by Ms. McKettrick, we have
Property owner
spoken.
to the south.
I know, I'm just confirming that as you know, she's here. The property owner at 736 was not at the site visit. I haven't spoken with them. I don't know if Rob's had any conversations in the past.
I have not. It's currently a tenant, and the owner I haven't spoke to for years.
So I think we learned at the site visit that the owner lives in the town of Milton. I don't think it should be too difficult to get in touch with them. I would think that they would want to know that this is happening.
Can I ask if anybody at the Department of Transportation has been talked about this particular intersection? Has been talked to?
I'll
Jeff?
take that one.
Go
I'll
ahead.
take that one. Yeah. So typically as Mr. Reardon's letter noted, and I believe it was comment 55, that the roadway is under Mass DOT jurisdiction. So we'll need to provide a state highway access permit to their office as part of the submission. So typically Mass DOT will not review plans until the local approvals have been achieved. And we'll need to upload that material as part of it. So because, Mass DOT is very, busy and backed up with a lot of these application permits, they don't typically take pre-application permit meetings. But in my past experience, judging from some of the comments I've received on other projects, they request, a 24-foot wide entryway for a development of this type, which I know we've discussed, will be on the future plan. So that's part of the idea behind us providing that clarity, is to making sure that, if we were to get local approval through the town of Milton, that once we provide the state highway access permit materials to Mass DOT, there's not a redesign effort that has to go through as well. Like, in other words, providing just consistency between this step of the process and then the Mass DOT step, if we were to get that far with it.
On the bike issues, I know that in Mr. Reardon's letter referenced the request to have a bike accommodation. Where would we expect the bikes to be going?
Is that a question for me, Mr. Mullen?
Anybody?
Yeah.
I mean,
Expectation anywhere.
certainly leave that to essentially, all three of the team members who are here, because they're the experts on that. So, as I said at the outset, perfectly logical question. We're not, because I don't see anybody speaking up, we don't have a definite answer, which doesn't mean that we don't have an answer. But like I said at the outset, that's certainly something that we'll come up with, and, presumably there's room to satisfy that. So again, it's perfectly fine going forward, in the long run, 12 board members, is probably productive. But I was just concerned that if we look like we don't have answers, that it would look like, okay, we're not prepared. And again, criticism of when we got the report, but just reassuring you that I understand that the questions are logical and fair, and we'll definitely address them.
Well, let me raise.
So the future plans have a modified parking lot. We addressed, the snow storage, the bike racks. We addressed again, we're in the process right now of addressing the comments of the peer review. 2 days is not sufficient to do this. So we're working through all the questions and comments of the peer review. Yes, we will have a bike rack in the garage and on the parking lot, so on the site. And we're addressing the other issues that were brought up: snow storage, relocating the dumpster, turning radiuses for the fire truck. all that stuff is, again, is going to be addressed in the revised plan.
A question slightly different, and that is, I'm just put on the table. I'm not sure we want to encourage bike use at this site. This is easily the most dangerous road in Milton. It's on an uphill slant. I think biking on this road is extremely dangerous. And I just want to put that on the table. This is a tough site, and I'm not sure we want to be heavily into bike accommodation with these units. I know that I'm often, advocating for a different position, but I'm nervous about the way the state highway operates in light of what's gone on that road over a long period of time. So, I mean, I don't know that that's a question, that's more of a statement, but that's why I asked about the bikes.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the school? I'm sorry.
We can all, in some ways, it's easy for us in a way, as long as we can have it satisfactorily. If you folks ultimately decide you want it, that's fine. If you don't want it, other than if Rob thinks it would be an amenity for the owners, but if you don't want it, then of course it's easy to take something out. So, again, it's appreciated and helpful that you express your thoughts right from the beginning. So thank you.
I don't know. I think it's something I'd like to hear from the town planner on perhaps, or maybe there's an alternate solution. Let me ask about the school bus. Has any thought been given to the school bus stop that would need to probably be here?
Sure. I mean, basically, we communicate with the superintendent or the principals of the local, whatever school, this would probably be College Cunningham, but we'll communicate with them in regards to an agreeable location for the school bus.
What about
But the
safety?
demographics is, so I can just finish here. The demographics here is mostly, older couples who are downsizing and young couples who are coming out of Boston, et cetera. So we're not per se catering to families, but we're, the demographics would be, like I said, downsizing, or it's not family. There's only, I think, 4 3-bedroom units here. So there's not going to be a lot of families and kids.
But if there's one kid, there has to be a place for the bus to
Sure.
pull off safely off of Route 28, and that's got to be on the plan.
Sure. And there's kids in this neighborhood right now. So we'll have to communicate with the superintendent or the principal and ask them where they would recommend to have a bus stop or relocate the bus stop. There's one at the corner of Pleasant Street right now, I believe.
Any further questions right now, Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Mr. Gray?
Does the easement support this level of usage?
Yes, I've investigated it, researched it. It's very clear it's not limited in any way. And, the two concepts related to right-of-ways and easements, overloading, although it's not per se a legal term, but overloading typically means if one property has the easement and then an owner tries to tack on to use that easement to also provide access to a lot that doesn't itself touch the easement area, that's overloading, but that's not a factor. That's not what's going on here. Overburdening is what's more commonly thought of, and based on the case law, I'm confident that this isn't overburdening, because there has to be limiting language in the grant, and it's not. It's a typical grant, just like in a right-of-way in a subdivision, for all purposes for which roadways are used in the town of Milton. As Ms. McKettrick said in her memo, I don't even think she was pushing strongly that it's clearly overburdening, which isn't to say that there aren't practical implications. I understand that, but in terms of the overloading, because of the number of units that are going to be there, rather the overburdening, I'm confident that's not the case.
All right, no other questions at the moment.
Mr. Freeman, if you've done the research and you've got anything in writing, would you be willing to share that with the board?
Sure, I had intended to, but then when kind of thought we were coming to a halt, at least in my mind, and again, not complaining that we're here tonight, but I put it aside. And then when I realized we were coming tonight, I just didn't schedule. But absolutely, I have the deeds and the plans of interest in a way is that in 1988, the zoning board, I suspect you folks weren't members back then, but the 1988, there's a special variance, I think it is, decision in 1988 that incorporates this right-of-way plan and actually made the 90 feet of frontage legal for the lot in question. And then it goes back earlier, as Ms. McEachran said.
It'd be helpful to see, and whatever
Sure.
you've got in the way of the title would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Michael, if I could ask one more quick question for Jeff. Jeff, have you guys started the ICE process with Mass DOT?
No, we have not.
Okay, I'd suggest getting that going because they won't entertain a access permit unless that process is fully followed.
Okay, understood.
I got caught myself on it. So
Just for the record, Mr. Freeman, nobody's prejudicing you here tonight. We understand that you only had a couple of days to look at Mr. Reardon's report. It was at the board's insistence that we went forward tonight. You'll have your opportunity to respond after you've had some time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As I say, it's okay.
We should see if anybody in the audience, in the public, has any questions for Mr. Reardon or just generally. Crystal, is there anyone with their hand up?
No, I don't see anybody.
I think Marion would like to. Marion, go ahead.
I just put my hand up. I appreciate the questions from the board because some of them do bring up issues that we mentioned in the most recent letter after the site walk, but I'd like to I want to clarify a little bit one issue for 718 Randolph Ave. I mean, we've had some discussion of overburdening and so forth and what the case law says. There's a very specific issue here, and I wish that the traffic analyst would look at it and give us more data. There's a length to this right-of-way up to the Driscoll driveway at 718. I have to see the new plan for the driveway, but it's still my understanding that traffic will exit going out towards Randolph Ave on the right side of the right-of-way as it does now. According to the Driscolls, there's approximately a minimum 5-minute wait going out into rush hour traffic on Route 28. So, and there will be a flow of traffic coming out of this development in the morning and the afternoon. There's some projected numbers in the traffic analysis. I don't know how realistic they are given the fact that there are, I think, 74 parking spaces. But in any case, the question is, as cars queue up on this right-of-way, they're going to block the Driscoll driveway, and they're not going to have a 5-minute wait to get out onto Route 28. They're going to have a geometrically increasing wait. I don't have the analysis looking at your traffic study to understand what that would be. I don't believe you've provided any data about the queuing on the right-of-way. And I think you should be looking at, you have all kinds of statistics, but they're available, and you have them in your report about Route 28, what the traffic volume is during the rush hour. There is a light across from the dump access road. It's triggered by people exiting from Reed Street. It doesn't cause any regular intervals in the traffic on Route 28 right now. So these are all factors which will influence how quickly cars can get out of this right of way as they exit during the rush hour, and they would have an influence in the afternoon coming in. So my request would be to have better, more detailed analysis of that particular problem. That's the factual information that could indicate whether there is an unreasonable interference with the Driscoll's access resulting from this development. So that I have other comments in my letter. You talked about some of them. We're very concerned about the proximity of the large parking area to the Driscoll land. I'm going to see what the new revised plans are like, and maybe provide some more comments about that. But I really like to see some attention on the specifics of how traffic's going to queue up. Maybe you feel that it's included in the comments made already, but I wanted to be very specific about what we see as a problem. So I don't have any further comments about the drainage Those are pretty technical reports, and I understand there's going to be more work done on those. I'd be very interested in seeing more discussion about conditions on the driveway and how it's a right of way. How the right of way is really going to work, I don't understand the explanation, but I know you'll be providing more information and more drawings. So I really look forward to seeing those and to seeing whether there is a solution to the problem that I'm talking about. Thank you.
And Michael, just to be clear, we sort of truncated our review a bit when we realized we didn't really understand how the intersection was going to function. So to Marion's point, we plan to wade further into those numbers as we get a little bit more clarity on how things are going to run.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So Peter, how do you want to proceed? I mean, there are clearly a lot of issues here.
Mike.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, of course.
I know in the study that was submitted with the application traffic study, there was reference on speed. I'm wondering, and maybe Tim will know this, what does the town have in terms of the most current actual speeds on Route 28? Do we have a reader out there?
Thanks, Jeff. Tim Zawinski, Director of Planning and Community Development for the town. I don't off the top of my head know where the closest reader is. I know at the very least, CTPS did a Route 28 corridor study that was released in 2021. So that's if, you know, they should have some speed data in there that is relatively recent. But we may also have some readers out there, and if we don't, it's not that big of a deal to go out and place those, either the solar kind of digital screen radar or the actually I don't know if it's easy to put the tubes out on 28, but we can get that data. So let me make a note to sort of dig up the most recent stuff that we've got, and I'll get that to the board.
I think it'd be helpful to have in proximate to this intersection.
Permission to speak, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, so the traffic study did include speed information.
I know.
And why that was collected was to, again, look at the stopping sight distance and safety questions that were alluded to in the review as well. So I have that information if you want me to share it, if you think that would be useful.
I would like to know it if you have it offhand, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I guess that's one advantage with the Zooms, right? So what we looked at was, so we took the speed recorders again on Randolph Ave right in front of the site. 48 miles an hour northbound and 49 miles per hour southbound. And that's the 85th percentile. So that's the speed that vehicles are traveling at or below. The speed limit on Route 28 is 40 miles an hour. So again, it's slightly higher, but when we look at our safety evaluation, we use the 85th percentile in this case, which is the higher number. And what we do is compare the amount of available sight distance looking left and looking right from the proposed driveway to make sure that the vehicles exiting the driveway have enough sight distance to, if they were to exit, that the vehicles on Route 28 would have enough time to slow down and stop if there were to be a hazard observed in the roadway.
Yeah, I read that and I appreciate that. My experience on Randolph Avenue is that the people who live in and around Randolph Avenue are not going to believe that. So, because I think most people think that the people on Randolph Avenue are up around 50 or 60 miles an hour. That's just anecdotally. So what I'm asking Tim to do is to just gather whatever the town has access to on speed so that we know we've got the best available information for this hearing. That's all. I don't know that, Tim. I don't know that it makes sense to do more, but I know there's more out there. So let's just get what we've got.
The more information we can get, the better, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
I have an attendee with their hand up, John Driscoll.
Sure. Mr. Driscoll?
Yes, Dennis Driscoll, I just want to ask, when they did the speed rating, was that when the pandemic was going on? Because just in the last 2 weeks, speeds have gone up tremendously on Randolph Ave. And that's my question.
Jeff, do you have an answer for that?
I'm trying to look up the specifics, but it would have been when we did the when we did the evaluation initially, which was, I believe, last fall, if I'm not mistaken.
And so October of 2021 or something like that.
Right. Why don't we do this? We're waiting for additional speed data. Why don't we wait till we get it all, and then we can see what we have and make judgments at that time.
So to go back, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to your question about, what we do next, and also speaking to what had been mentioned about a workshop, I like that idea. My thought at this point, and I certainly welcome input from anyone, but especially Sean, given the fact that we've said that there's going to be, a decent amount of changes, it seems to me as though to schedule a workshop at this point is premature. As much as I love to do it, it usually helps move things along. And, representing the applicant, we'd love to move this along as quickly as possible in a reasonable fashion. That said, my experience and my instinct is that in this case, especially since we'll be meeting again in, whatever it is, April 13th, that it probably makes more sense to set dates and all of that after everybody gets a chance to look at the revised plans. Maybe the experts, our team can talk to Sean one-on-one in between now and the next hearing. So that would be my suggestion, although if you want to discuss whether your other board members and Sean and all think that at some point a workshop would be useful, I'm certainly fine with that, because as I say, it might be theoretically, which I know would be likely over-optimistic, but theoretically, we make revisions, Sean looks at and says, yep, everything's all done 100%, in which case there probably wouldn't be the need for a workshop, although, that's not likely, as I say, but we do think there'll be substantial, good progress.
Given the amount of issues that I think you guys and you and your team need to address, I think you're going to need the full 3 weeks to work on that stuff and bring it back to us before the April 13th hearing. I don't think you're going to have time to have a meaningful workshop with Sean between now and then. So why don't we plan to appear on the 13th to hear the changes that you and your team have made in response to Sean's comments?
Yep, I agree.
And comments from the rest of the board and the public tonight.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, this is Deb Keller from Merrill. Just to confirm, would it be acceptable to the board if I touch base with Sean just to go over any of the comments, just to make sure that we're addressing them appropriately?
If you mean if you have questions about some of his comments and you need clarification, that's okay with me if it's okay with Sean.
Yeah, by all means.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to say tonight? All right. Well,
I have John Driscoll with his hand up.
Okay. We can hear from John or Dennis.
No, this is John Driscoll.
Hey, John.
Hi, how are you? I appreciate everything that's happening. And I just want to make a comment. This gentleman that's going to develop this never even presented us what the plan, what he was going to do. I heard it from the town of Milton. So I'm not surprised that he didn't try to contact the people down below. They live on Canton Ave. They're very easy to find. And I'm inviting everyone on this Zoom here to use the driveway. Try to exit and enter any given time of day and see how it is. I live it. And all these studies and stuff doesn't tell you the real story. I'm really telling you that. And you're adding 70 some odd cars, and it's a tough road. That's all I have to say, but I'm inviting everybody on this panel to try doing accident and entering it at any time of day. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else, Crystal? I think that looks like it.
No, that's it.
Mike, if I can just chime in real quick, just so we've also got I don't think we have a peer review report from Cliff Bomer yet on the design peer review. So I assume that'll be coming in. Sorry, my little guy is chasing me. I assume that'll be coming in shortly. I don't know if we want to make some time at the next hearing to hear about that? Or do we want to sort of schedule that for another hearing? I just want to make sure we're kind of managing all of those reports as they come in.
It would be my inclination to have Mr. Bomer present at the next hearing if there's time.
I think, I mean, we can play it based on when the report comes in. So I think, you know, we'll try to pencil him in, you know, if it comes in a good enough time, and if not, you know, I'll keep you apprised of when that comes in, and we can fade our schedule from there.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Peter?
And just, I don't disagree. I think that could be helpful in terms of expediting, naturally subject to the same thing. If it comes in just too soon before, I would probably say, although this was useful, I say thank you that this was, I think, a good night to have. So the fact that we went forward is probably in the long run a good thing. But again, if we, you know, the architecture is different. If we really have no time to respond, I might say, could we just wait till the next hearing? But other than that, it's a good idea to submit it and to attend, and we'll play it by ear.
Sure, I agree. And look, just because you're not going to get a chance to digest fully the report or the presentation, you know, we're all professionals, and we understand that, you know, we'll hear from you the next time, and we'll hear your position, and you won't be prejudiced by that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right, everybody. Thank you very much. See you in 3 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks,
Thank you.
Crystal.